The Legend of Carrauntoohill Cave by Daryl Allen Devine. Forward. The major portion of my adult life has been spent deciphering ancient Celtic runes found here, the Tuatha of Larn, in what is now Northern Ireland. They tell of long ago times and of long forgotten adventures which coincide with various existing legends and folklore from the area. Though I have completed translating but a small portion of these writings, I wish to put them to print as each legend reveals itself. This then, the first from the ancient runes, is the Legend of Carrauntoohill Cave. Chapter 1. It was a time when the mists still whispered in from the sea, concealed, often as not, the Vikings who would raid our land. It was a time of darkness in every heart and a time of fear, as we were farmers and fishermen, mostly, and no match for these ruthless warriors who plundered our homes and took from us the young and the women of childbearing years. Our ancient gods seem to have forsaken us, given way to the sword and axe of these bearded men who spoke in a strange tongue and praised other gods. The blood and the tears flowed heavy for many years, until there was Larad of Carrauntoohill. Chapter 2. The small coastal village of Carrauntoohill was made up mostly of crude rock homes, mortised, with rich mud and mixed with sand. From the adjoining bay the streets were merely wide paths worn into the native earth over the years, an uneven rock-strewn surface in the few sunny days, and a slip-slide nightmare to traverse during the normal wet season that lasted the majority of the year. Most of the village made their living by fishing, though a bakery of sorts existed, and what now would be referred to as a pub, that served up a grog that was more akin to a slow poison than an alley, graced the center of town. Just outside of town was the open-air temple where the old Celts would worship. Its description is not unlike that of Stonehenge. Though much smaller in scales at one time, it was the most important place in the village. In time, interest in the old gods began to wane, and only recently, with the arrival of the invaders, had the temple suddenly been restored to its former usage. All inhabitants had in some way felt the bitter loss of a loved one by the invading hordes of Norsemen. Families huddled together in a single dwelling, each posting their own guards day and night for protection. All had at least one family member to turn to, all that is, except Larad, whose parents had been slain by the invaders, and his brothers and sisters, carried off as slaves to the cold country to the north. Without family, as the ancient laws prescribed, Larad would have been left to die, an innocent outcast within his own village. But against tradition, the baker's wife later took him in to ease the loss of her only son. Leder, wife of Surti the baker, was a gentle woman, often finding herself at odds with the ancient ways and the feelings in her own heart. She knew she could only console herself by saving the young boy, even though his life would be rough and his treatment by others would be as that of hated gulls that stole their fish as it dried upon the beach. At least he would be alive, and a reminder of her own son, who, though taken, might somehow yet also live. Larad was but 14 years old at the time he lost his family, and a long 2 years had passed, though to him it was a yesterday. He could still see the unkempt men dressed in skins of animals, and still smell the foulness of them. He could still hear their blood-curdling screams, and see the sun reflect from their swinging swords and massive shields etched in his mind, were his parents as they tried to protect their children, and with a single swipe of a hardened blade, were cast aside. He recalled how his two brothers fought bravely,
but were overpowered and roped together as livestock being taken to slaughter. But it was his 3 sisters, whose clothes were torn from their bodies as these vile creatures laughed and took their turns with them, that still haunted his evernight. Larad had fought them bravely with his bare hands. They had toyed with him and formed a ring about him, hitting him constantly with the broadside of their swords, bruised and bleeding, winded and barely able to stand. Through swollen eyes, he saw an object racing towards his head, and was able to move but slightly before a mighty force shattered his consciousness. The impact created a huge gash in Larad's head, from a short distance having the appearance of a crushed skull and surely death. Or so thought the laughing Viking that picked up his war axe and kicked Larad into the rubble ditch, breaking a rib. Larad had awakened in pain long after the Vikings had once again set sail for another conquest. He could hardly move, and every breath made him feel as though he had a Norseman's knife sticking into his left side. His face was swollen, so baggy and matted with dried blood that even a friendly neighbor dog whelped away in sheer terror at the sight and smell his hands. His body was bloated from injuries, and through his hair he could feel the smooth coldness of his own bare skull, where the axe had struck him a glancing blow. Larad never thought he would live, but he knew he must. He had to avenge his family. He had to try to find them. He had to somehow survive. Leder had found him 2 days later along the path the Vikings had followed during their raid. As she looked for what she hoped she would not find, the body of her only child instead, she had found this weakened, barely living child, appearing to be only slightly younger than her own son. In his delirious state, Larad had called her mama, and secretly, not daring to openly defy the ancient law, she had brought him water and pieces of bread and biscuit, a kindness he would never forget.
Chapter 3. Larad had slowly mended, and though untrue, had remained silent as Leder had told the villagers that he had family in Killarney, the larger village across the mountain, and that he could be indentured to them in the baker's trade, until which time the family could bond him free, had she not lied for him. He would have been condemned to death as the old law prescribed. Truly, Larad did not understand all of this at the time, but he trusted Leder and treasured every moment they could secretly talk. Larad worked hard in the bakery. He was always up early to mix and knead the coarse dough, which only Surti was deemed skilled enough to bake in the kiln made of stone. It was also Surti who would mix the scraps of bread, potatoes, wild berries, and other ingredients that would eventually turn into the pungent liquid they served to the patrons that clamored for it. Larad would crush the grain for flour. His was always the heaviest labor and the messiest once the biscuits and breads were baked. He would have to wait on the rude customers sitting at the crude wooden tables, taking their insults and cleaning up the spilled drink and soggy crumbs, remaining from grown men dunking, slobbering, and spewing forth the mixture. In heated arguments or debates, his status being below that of the mongrel curse that often wandered the trash heap in search of tidbits of food, Larad had to hang his head and endure the shame they vented upon him. His princely wages were learning a skill, and few old loaves of bread, a handful of biscuits, a bit of the vile drink, and a lean-to to sleep in, one he shared with the animals. Many of those who publicly insulted and degraded Larad had benefited from his kindness many times in days past, when fishing was poor or the weather had prevented them from plying their trade. It was Larad who had offered to share his small meals with them. Each knew the generosity, yet each knew the ancient rules to which they must abide in spite of what was really in their hearts. Larad was an outsider now, and outsiders were rarely tolerated, much less allowed to live amongst them. But Larad had become in reality an insider who by sheer circumstance was relegated to an outsider's position after all. He had never really hurt anyone, and yet had helped many, and he had never disobeyed the ancient laws.
And he did have family who lived over the mountain, who were said to be akin to their village.
Chapter 4. It was an early October morning, as the wind howled outside, blowing its icy breath across the land, when a dark, bedraggled figure opened the door. The few patrons turned to look at this strange man in a tattered black robe, whose face was obscured by the large, overhanging black hood, as tattered and dirty as the rest of the man's attire. He walked in a stooped-over manner, possibly brought on by age. In his heavily wrinkled right hand, he carried a huge staff made of some gnarly wood on his left hand. The oil lamps reflected their light from some massive stone ring he wore upon his second finger. A silence fell upon them all, as though an image of pure wickedness had walked into the room. Each waited with their breath held tight in their chest, for this figure to engulf them all in death. As the hunched man entered, the door behind him closed, though no one recalled him turning to do so. Softly, he took a few steps towards the table holding the cut bread and biscuits, and from under the hood came a very low male, asking to no one, yet to everyone, "May I partake of but a cut of bread or biscuit, a drink? I am hungry and have nothing to offer in exchange." Almost en masse, all those in the room exhaled. They burst into laughter at first, but then realizing that this stranger had frightened them all, they began throwing their wooden cups at him, telling him to be gone and that they cared not for strangers, especially beggars. As the cups either hit him or passed harmlessly by, the man said nothing. He did not even flinch. He simply turned, walked towards the door pews. The door opened. His hooded face turned to his left side. "But for one," he said, in a voice low and cold as any winter's chill. He exited and the door closed behind him, allowing an ungodly smell to briefly fill the room, extinguishing all the lamps as though void of air itself in his passing. All were now genuinely afraid. None could recall any conversation or comment that would have prompted the beggar's cold statement. All but one. And they spoke in whispers lest he might still be unseen, yet amongst them. Chapter 5. Larad had been throwing trash into the rubbish pit when he heard the crash of cups striking walls and the floor, the laughter, and then the sudden silence, as he saw a strange figure leave the bakery and start up the path towards him. He watched as the man, leaning heavily on his staff and walking with labored steps, approached him. For some reason, he seemed to be transfixed to the spot and was unable to move his body or take his eyes off this figure that seemed so out of place. Yet, he was not afraid, even though his heart raced in his chest. He tried to make out the features of the man beneath that tattered black robe and hood. Yet his observations were no more keen than those in the bakery. The humble-looking figure stopped at arm's length from Larad, and a soft, deep voice that came from beneath the low-hanging hood, asking, "I am hungry and thirst, but have nothing to exchange. Have you anything you can share?" Larad felt a deep sadness for the pathetic figure before him, and he responded, "I have nothing fit for a man to eat with me now. But if you wait here, I will bring you bread and some grog, so you may not hunger or thirst. There is time, yet there is no time. There is not 2 years, yet there is one," said the stranger. Larad was puzzled by his response and thought the old one mad with hunger. "It will take me but a short time to go and return," he said. "Yes," the old man said, "but a short time." He turned away from Larad, then with head hung low, he slowly turned again towards him, and lifting his staff, he pointed it towards the mountain. "There," he said, "bring it there." Larad looked in the direction of the pointed staff, high into the sacred Carrauntoohill mountain. There were many strange tales of this mountain, ancient creatures that once roamed from its summit, and some that were said to have flight, as the birds.
He looked for some landmark or some evidence of a man-built structure to go to, but he saw only mountain. He turned to ask the man where he was to bring the food and grog, but to his amazement, the man was gone. Laurad spun in a circle, looking all about him. His eyes strained in the direction of the path that led on towards the mountain. But the Old One was not to be seen. Laurad's heart almost burst from his chest. His hands were now cold as the waters offshore from the village, yet sweat tingled from his brow. It must be from the blow to his head, thought Laurad, for surely he felt dizzy, and his insides churned as a lurching fish. He dared not tell anyone lest they believe him mad as well.
Chapter 6. Laurad rushed back to the bakery, lest his presence be missed, but on his arrival, it was obvious that the men were too engrossed in their conversations of the stranger to have paid him any heed at all. As he worked, he listened carefully and realized he too had talked to the stranger. He had promised this man food and drink, yet the man had not waited. But he had pointed to the mountain. There he'd try to find the stranger. He wrestled with the decision all day, and as he stowed away his major 2 loaves of bread, 3 biscuits, and a small flask of grog, he still had not come to a final decision as he left the bakery, his day being complete. Deep in thought, he walked towards the rubbish pit, following the same path the Old One had followed, anxious to rid himself of the foul mixture. He carried in the crock. His mind was so occupied on their stories of how no one had seen the Old One actually reach out to close or open the door, and how one so hobbled could move so quickly, so engrossed in his own thoughts. He almost fell head first into the pit. It was after he glanced up towards the mountain that his eyes caught sight of the pit, and his foot stopped just a step short of toppling him over. Somewhat shaken, he sat down beside the reeking hole and poured the contents of the crock into it. But his eyes kept looking towards the path that led up into the mountain. He tried to calculate how far he could travel up the path before he would have to turn around in order to be off the mountain and back to the village by nightfall. What had the man meant by a short time? Could it be that without food or liquid the man would soon die? Laurad recalled how Leader had tended him without question, and felt guilty that he had even questioned what it was he must do. He also recalled the eerie feelings he had around the man, and how he had seemed to vanish right before his eyes. Yes, Laurad was afraid, but he set the crock by the pit, knowing he would fetch it on the return trip, and as he eyes once again, trying to find where the trail led high into the mountains, Laurad stood and checked to be sure the food and grog were safely bundled, and set forth. He must hurry and find the Bigar, and he knew to do so safely. He must set forth now. Chapter 7. As he walked along the pathway that led to the mountain, Laurad was filled with misgivings, and though he tried to control it, the first signs of fear were settling into his stomach. He was headed towards a sacred place on a path traveled only by those who sought the altar at the foothills or by the priests themselves, the only ones who dared to venture beyond the stone monoliths. His thoughts drifted back to the strange figure in black, and he struggled to recount every detail. Yet, he could not add anything to what he recalled, nor could he remember exactly what the man had said, except for his being hungry and bring him food and drink. The rest were the ramblings of a madman. Even the man's very features were but a blur in his mind. Or had he even seen them? Before he knew it, he was at the curve in the path that led upwards, towards the altar, and at the very foothills of Carrauntoohill. He paused and looked behind him. The village in the distance looked so small that he held out his hand and turned it sideways, giving the appearance of the village resting in the palm of his hand, and he smiled. Taking a deep breath, he turned and faced the mountain.
Realizing how huge it really was and hesitant to continue onward, he knew the temple was on a flat plain after the sixth sharp curve to the right. The sacred place was hidden behind the mountain, and though he had never seen it, he had heard of the blood rituals conducted there in ancient times, as well as the dances and mystic singing that occurred in current times. For some reason, he found none of this reassuring. He hoped that he would not have to travel much longer, as his eyes strained to find the figure of the strange man. He had been gone now for almost an hour, and the sun would begin to set within 2 hours, and total darkness would cover the land in about 3, no more than an hour. More, he told himself, as the top of the obelisk came into view. He knew that it was surrounded by a ring of stones that had stones laid flat upon them. He had been told that the ancient ones had piled dirt under the tall stones as they laid upon their sides, and raised them mere inches at a time, until surrounded by a huge mound of dirt with the tall stones only revealing their tops, had drug flat stones to set upon them, and carefully dug away the dirt until only the stones remained, those that formed the circle, and the single large standing stone in the center. As the altar came into view, he was amazed at actually seeing this sacred place, and in awe of the labor that it must have taken to create this breathtaking sight. He looked for the hooded one, but he was not to be found. All Larad located was a very narrow, weed-covered path that went from behind the altar to as far as the eye could see, up, way up the mountain, ending at the clouds. Or did it? He was beginning to realize that no mere beggar would have dared venture here. As Larad stood at the old path, he noted that it had not been traveled in many a year. But he also noticed that standing here, there was no sound, nary even a bird song, and not so much as a breeze was felt. The wild flowers that still grew from the side of the mountain gave it a beauty beyond anything he had ever seen. Yet there was something foreboding that seemed just beyond him. He had just turned back towards the sacred site and away from the aged path, deciding for himself that with darkness soon approaching, he was a fool to be so far from his village, and that the old man was mad from age, when suddenly darkness came upon where he stood. A gust of wind pushed him backwards towards the path, or towards the edge of the cliff, and Larad struggled against the wind, falling upon his knees. He tried to grasp the earth to hold on. Over the roar of the wind, a voice bellowed, "Drem awaits!" As suddenly as it became dark, the light returned and the wind died, and as Larad, now visibly shaken, struggled to his feet, something inside him told him he must venture up the aged trail, this path that only the priest traversed, and he trembled within as well.
Chapter 8. Larad looked at the trail, following it as far as the eye could see, and he could tell that the overgrown path narrowed as it climbed up the mountain. How far dare he go? As it looked up at the sky, he knew that time was rapidly running out for a safe return to his village already. The first hint of the oncoming curtain of darkness could be seen above the top of the mountain. In spite of his fears of being trapped on Carrauntoohill as night fell, something, or someone named Drem, awaited him further ahead, and he had to find out why. As he trudged ahead, though he was in excellent shape, he was starting to feel an ache in his lungs, and his legs were beginning to cramp from the exertion of the climb. The path, once 6 feet in width, now was barely 3 feet across. To his left was a sheer drop-off. To his right, the ragged face of the mountain, now devoid of all vegetation. Behind him was the security of his village. If only he could get back in time ahead, an ever-narrowing rock-strewn trail that led to potential peril in this place, forbidden to him. Though he could not see around the next turn in the path, he knew that it would be the point that he must turn back in order to get home before darkness overtook him. Should he not encounter the beggar or Drem, the task had been harder and taken longer than he had planned, and still no sign of the aged one. And again,
Doubts about his being here arose, only to recall the voice in the gale. He had thought that he could travel downhill faster than he had coming up, but having to watch every step on this narrow path had cut even that extra margin of time the bend approached, and he hoped there would be his answer, and dream. His heart raced as he approached the bend, a 2.5-foot path cut into the side of Carrauntoohill, no longer a trail, but almost a flat walkway of pure stone that appeared to almost vanish into the air, while worn to almost a polished look. Now facing and hugging the side of the mountain, he carefully proceeded, daring not to look down into the distant valley below. As he reached the point where the walkway and the sky seemed to meet, he carefully leaned to his left and peered around the corner. The walkway proceeded about 20 more feet, then became an rock-strewn path once again. Holding his breath and carefully inking his body around the corner, turning back now, entered his mind more at once. He carefully made his way to the path, and the 3-foot-wide surface made Larad feel a little more secure. His back was beginning to ache from the constant leaning forward and hugging the wall as he climbed, and his eyes continued to search in vain for the hooded figure or Drem. His mind, that had been telling him to turn back for some time now, seemed to be panicking and yelling inside his skull that he had now come too far. It was something else that drove him forward, but he was already considering how to explain this and his late arrival tomorrow to Leader and Surti, who had befriended him and depended on him. His body was tired. The skies were darkening, and already he could no longer see the top of the mountain. In fact, even the path was turning a dark gray. The thought of spending the night on a tiny pathway in total darkness did not appeal to Larad in the least. Yet he continued on. He had passed the point of no return long ago, and he only hoped some shelter lay ahead. He could head back at first light to his village. Suddenly, he could see in the fading light ahead that part of the path was gone, not just hidden in a shadow, but really gone. Slowly he approached, and on closer inspection, could tell that some giant rock had, probably many years ago, come tumbling down the mountain, striking the edge of the path and literally sheared it off, leaving a mere 1.5 foot at best of the path, remaining even that, with its jagged under edges that clung above this precipice, gave no sense of stability to what little remained. Fear welled up inside him as Larad struggled with what to do. He could not make it to the safety of the temple now, and the path overlooking the abyss was not a place he wished to try to sleep with this small ledge hold him. Or would it crumble beneath his weight and send him hurtling to the earth below? Could he even manage to embrace the wall and inch across without losing his balance? And even if he did manage to cross, what lay on the other side? Larad looked carefully at the ledge. He figured it to be maybe 12 feet across from where he now stood to where the path remained unharmed and intact where it continued. He could see the path widen to 2.5 feet again. He could make out that the path began a sudden rise, disappearing maybe 50 feet beyond as it topped the small rise on the mountain. Yet he could see no further in the fading light.
First, Larad moved the bread and grog to a position behind him, so that it rested above his waist belt. He wanted to get as close to the mountain as he could, then sliding his feet sideways and embracing the mountain. He shuffled his feet slowly on the ledge, grasping with his hands any little outcropping of stone that might help him secure his balance. In what seemed like hours, Larad, covered in sweat and chilled by the evening air, managed to reach the safety of the pathway beyond the ledge. Every muscle in his body cried out for him to rest, and Larad still hoped that some wide ledge or cut into the mountain would afford him shelter for him. The search was ended. There only remained finding a safe haven for the evening. As he approached the rise, Larad noted that at the crest, the path seemed to be wider, maybe 5 feet across, and he hoped that this meant close by there would be a place to rest. Now 5 feet from the top of the rise, Larad strained his head to see what lay on the other side. But all he could see was the path as it arched up before him. 2 more steps and Larad froze. Here on the backside of the mountain, there was nothing. Nothing but a deep gorge. Maybe the mountain had collapsed. Maybe a landslide had taken away part of the mountain. All Larad knew was that he could go no further. Neither up nor down now. Safely with darkness engulfing him, Larad carefully removed the grog flask and bread sack, securing them in a circle of stone. And he cleared a place on the 5-foot ledge close to the mountain face, using stones again to form a small barrier to secure his feet. So he would not slip down the mountain to his left. He created a small wall of stone lager stones so that he would not roll off the face of the cliff, and having made a crude bed upon the area he had cleared for the stones, lay down to rest as the night closed in around him. Chapter 9. It had been less than an hour of a fitful attempt to sleep when a low rumble was heard, suddenly much louder, and the earth beneath him began to shake, and Larad could hear rocks falling from the mountain, bouncing into the blackness below. The rumbling became louder, and the earth became shaking so violently beneath him that Larad knew that at any moment he would be dislodged from his ledge, or that the ledge would disintegrate beneath him, and he was helpless. The stars above his head seemed to sway back and forth as the earth continued to move beneath him, and there was absolute blackness and a sudden calm. His ears strained for some sound, but he heard nothing. Larad had to put his hands up to his eyes just to assure they were open. But still blackness. His nose seemed to detect a slight mustiness in the air. Beneath him, he could still feel the solid earth. His hand groped to his right as he lay. The small stone wall was still in place, and he could feel the rocks at his feet. To the left as he lay, he felt for the solid mass of the mountain. But there was only open space. Frightened more than he had ever been in his life, Larad strained his arm to stretch full life, to feel once again. Only carefully lowering his hand, he was surprised to find a floor extending out from where the mountain's side once stood, a drop-off of only 2 feet. But how long did it extend? He tried to calm himself. Surely he was dreaming, and his mind imagined unseen horrors lurking just beyond where he lay. Horrors that waited for him to move or make a mistake, at which point he would be swallowed up by the creatures of the night. Larad wondered why his body still ached so if he were, in fact, still asleep. Yet, with the disappearance of the mountain, he was more afraid that he was really awake. As he lay there struggling with his senses and his own mind, his heart leaped from his chest to his throat, as the silence was shattered by a soft voice, one coming from where the abyss should be. "Why didn't you turn back?" asked the voice. Larad, who didn't appreciate being frightened out of wits by this intrusion, much less talking to some specter that was hanging between heaven and earth over an abyss, shot back angrily. "I tried! Or have you forgotten? The sun disappeared in dew or something. Almost blew me off the face of the mountain." And he demanded to know, who or what does it dream? There was a moment of silence, followed by a slight low chuckle. "I am Drem," said the soft voice from the darkness, as it drew nearer to where Larad lay, in fear. Chapter 10. At first, Larad could see nor hear any movement, yet he knew Drem was drawing ever closer to him. Slowly, as he strained every sense of his hearing, Larad could hear the soft swirl of cloth drawing ever closer to where he lay. He could discern no movement of feet to accompany the sound. Larad sat up, fearing to even draw a breath, as he felt a soft breeze upon his face. Whatever or whoever Drem was but inches from him. Suddenly all was silent. The earth was perfectly still except for the beating of his heart, that now sounded like rapid thunder in his ears. He would feel sweat forming on his forehead, and the goosebumps raise upon his arms and even down his legs. After a moment that seemed to Larad as an eternity, he spoke haltingly, fearfully, Drem? In a voice so near him. Larad pushed rapidly away. Forgetting he was upon a mountain ledge, came the simply word, yes. Larad groped about him, now realizing his seemingly perilous position, but all about him. His hands touched nothing but solid earth. Raising his hands, he felt for some surface of the mountain. So, it had not been a dream. There was none. His mind raced, trying to recall where he had made his slight bed, his positioning, the mountain, the rocks, they were the only thing that seemed to be where he recalled. The mountain was truly gone. He could hear what sounded like someone swallowing, and the hair on his neck stood up like a frightened cat. You remembered the wee food and drink, said the voice, sounding gentle and pleasant. Larad tried to acclimate himself in the darkness. Locating the stones, he felt the ring where he had lain the grog and food. It was gone. Are you hungry, Larad? Asked the voice. Yes, answered Larad cautiously. Why didn't you eat and drink of the food you were carrying? Asked the voice. I had promised it to the beggar man, which I now presume to be you. Shot back Larad, annoyed. He continued. You had no right to scare me to death, and why didn't you wait for me to bring you food and drink when we were close to the village? You had to prove yourself worthy. Gently answered the voice. Worthy of what? Demanded Larad. And how do you know my name? He suddenly asked mildly. Fearing he may have been too curt and could well have misjudged this man he presumed to be a mere Gadar. Eat first, then we will talk, assured the voice. Larad could hear the flask and bag being set directly before him in the darkness. He reached hesitantly out, and his hands quickly located the food and grog. He ate a piece of bread quickly, realizing his own hunger was deep. As he slowly sipped of the grog, he realized there had been nothing drunk from this flask. Cautiously, he reached into the bag, his fingers feeling for the bread within. He counted, neither was there bread missing from the bag. You have not eaten, nor have you drunk. Larad addressed the figure in the darkness. I had said and drunk, was the reply. There is no bread gone from the bag. There is no grog gone from the flask. Yet I was sure I had heard you drink. Respond, Larad. I cannot eat knowing you have not also partaken. I have fed and drunk. Again was the reply, Larad. Eat, drink, then we talk. Hearing his name again sent shivers down his very spine. Larad laid the bag and flask aside, though he still hungered. I cannot, thinking you hunger and are too proud to say so. Respond, Larad. In a burst of laughter the voice boomed. Proud? I who wander as a beggar to you proud? I do not plead of men nor beg of them. I but ask of them. In a sudden change of voice, deep, demanding, authoritative, came now, eat, drink. There was no doubt about it now. Larad was afraid this was no mere beggar, nor did it sound as any mere man. He wanted to escape, but where was the mountain? Where was he? He would have to bide his time. Try to appease this creature until the daylight came, and he could see his way clear to run. Run. Yes, run. At least he knew what he was done to do now. So Larad, ever listening, ever trying to make out something. Anything in the darkness, finally began to eat and drink. Chapter 11. In the stillness, the breaking of the crusted bread sounded of rocks tumbling down a mountainside. Mere chewing seemed to be echoing sounds of 50 men eating at once inside a cask. Swallowing sounded so loud it reminded him of a large toad by his bed. In the village, he was sure. Drem was either having to smother laughter or be surely horrified by his manners. Worse yet, what if this were another strange test, and others like Drem were watching, waiting? And if so, for what reason? Ever self-conscious. Ever self-conscious. He finished his small meal, saving a small amount of bread and grog for his escape.
Run to where? Asked the voice. So taken aback by the question, Larad was stunned at total silence. His mind reeled. His mind, somehow this creature, or whatever Drem really was reading his very thoughts. A soft chuckle emerged from the darkness at that time, followed by, "Now we talk." Chapter 12. Larad was both relieved at the thought of finally getting some answers, and yet mortified by what he may see or find out. Taking a deep breath, his only response was silence. "Follow me," said the voice in a matter-of-fact manner. "But there is no light. I cannot see. Have you a torch and striker?" asked Larad. "You do not see, for you choose to see with only what the eyes think exists," said the voice. Larad rubbed his hands to his eyes. They were in fact open. He strained heavily against the darkness. He saw only black, as that emitted by a frightened squid. "Yes," said the voice. "You see the ink, yet the squid is there. Do you dare look beyond yourself?" Apologetically, Larad answered, "I am sorry, but there is only ink. You speak in terms I do not understand, even from the first time we met. At least I think it was you I met. I am no longer sure of what you are. I can only recall what you appeared to be." "A Begar," responded the voice in a calm manner. "Yes," said Larad. Yet the voice continued, "For a mere Begar, you ventured forth high into a sacred mountain, just because you had pledged food and drink." "Yes," replied Larad. "You appeared hungry and in need." "In need of what?" Larad asked the voice. Larad thought about the question for a moment. "I don't know," he said. "I only felt that you might perish without my help." "It is true," said the voice. Larad had to think again about what he had just said. Had he not just said he felt the Begar would perish without his bringing him food and grog? Yet the Begar had not eaten. The Begar had not taken of the drink, so therefore, how could it be true? Larad was now more curious than afraid. He tried to think back on the first meeting and all that seemed to have transpired since, all of which this preacher seemed to be all too knowledgeable of. Finally he asked, "Are you a god?" There was a moment of silence before the voice answered softly, "No, Larad. I am no god. I am a man such as yourself, such as any man." "So Drem is a man," thought Larad. "Drem is the Begar, but is the man really Drem? Is the Begar really Drem?" What was this? He seemed to be thinking in some strange rhyme, something that made no sense whatsoever, yet somehow seemed to make all the sense in the world.
Chapter 13. You did not mock me nor turn me away. You did not tell me to eat from the trash heap if I hungered, nor drink from the animals true for my thirst. You asked me to wait, as you had nothing fit for a man to eat or drink with you at the time. Said Drem. Larad recalled the hooded figure bent heavily upon his staff, the soft deep voice saying he was hungry and thirsty and asking if Larad had anything he could share. He also recalled Drem saying there is time, yet there is no time. There is not 2 years, yet there is 1. He remembered Drem seemed to say time was short, and why bring him food and drink up this holy mountain that was more fit to a goat than man? And how had Drem seemed to vanish into thin air? What of the wind, the sudden darkness as he climbed? What of the voice that was not that of Drem, the one that bellowed, "Drem awaits!" What happened to the mountain, the stars, the sounds in the night? Was this really Drem? What was meant by seeing only with the eyes? Surely, truly, this was darkness, a darkness beyond the deepest pit. And what was a Drem? Really? You ask of yourself too many questions without answers. The time has come, said the voice. Now, you must rise and follow me. Follow not too closely,
lest you trip upon my robes, veer not either too far left nor right, lest you fall from the narrow path. But I cannot see, Larad said in a broken, almost panic-stricken voice. Look ahead to the light, said the voice. Look ahead, we must go. Now! Larad could hear the movement of heavy cloth. He felt again a slight breeze as the creature rose. Carefully he rose to his own feet, straining his every fiber to see something. Anything. He could feel himself struggling just to maintain his very balance. Somewhere to either side was a drop-off. Behind him he feared to even venture a guess. In front was a specter that wanted him to follow in total darkness and look for a light as a guide that he definitely could not see. Larad would probably have remained in that very spot until daylight, had it not been for a sudden rumble and the mountain beginning to lurch beneath his feet. Cautiously, Larad extended his right foot and stepped forward into the total blackness.
Chapter 14. Larad found it reassuring to feel the solid earth beneath his foot. Slowly and carefully he took a step forward with his left foot, and once again was met with a flat, solid surface. "Come," said Drem from somewhere close ahead. "Have faith in yourself and you shall see." Faith? Thought Larad. What I need to see is a torch. But Larad, though very frightened, slowly walked in the direction of Drem's voice. He had proceeded 10 more steps, placing him almost at the point where he had last heard Drem's voice. When he thought in the darkness, far ahead in front of him, he could make out a faint light. It appeared almost as a slight, indistinct blur at first. But with each step, Larad felt a bit more self-confident. The light grew brighter, and his steps quickened towards it. The light seemed to be coming from a cave within the mountain. But if it were a cave within the mountain, where was he right now? He looked around him. There were still no stars to be seen, no sound except for his own heartbeat and steps. He listened for some sound of Drem. There was none. He was close enough now to the cave to see that it was Hooch. He could make out the walls on the right side. They were as smooth as a calm sea, almost polished in appearance. He could see that he was in fact in some kind of tunnel leading directly towards the light. He wondered why Drem had not told him that there was no danger. He extended his arms left, then right. Yes, he was in fact surrounded by walls. Moving back to the center of the tunnel, Larad walked faster towards the cave, curious to what was really inside, and anxious to find Drem. As he entered the mouth of the cave, though lighted completely by some source he could not see, there was no ceiling that his eye could focus on, and all the walls were slick and polished, reflecting the light all around him. The cave had a gentle slope downwards. It went on beyond his vision, the sides clearly visible, almost as an arch with no top. Drem, he called. He could hear his voice magnified by echo as it rolled down the cave and bounced back to him. He had not noticed an echo in the tunnel, and now he wondered why not. A little further, Larad, came Drem's voice somewhere far in front of him. The voice was as crystal pure and clear, but there was no echo. Now Larad could see that the cave turned to the left not far in front of him. He also realized that the walls were giving off their own light, something he could not understand, as he felt no heat nor chill. In fact, the cave was very comfortable. As Larad turned the corner, he saw Drem seated upon a chair made of this strange rock. In front of him was a table. Beside him, a vacant chair, all of stone. This part of the cave was much larger than what he had seen so far. As he approached Drem, he looked around. Suddenly his eyes saw a huge ledge. He could not believe his eyes. His heart raced, and he stopped where he was to be sure of what he thought he saw. Chapter 15. There it was, almost 20 feet in the air, directly above where Drem sat.
a ledge emitting its own light. Or was it the giant egg nestled clearly within the ledge that was aglow? Larad tried to guess its size just from what part he could see. Surely, it was at least 7 feet across and another 4 feet high. It appeared to be resting upon a very large mat of the greenest and thickest moss. He had even seen the egg had a very rough texture to it, and Larad thought that surely, whatever had laid this object was not only gigantic, but must have experienced a tremendous great difficulty in the actual laying process. It had an almost a sandy color appearance, and either the egg was emitting its own light, or light was coming from behind it on the ledge. Larad kept trying to figure which of the two choices it actually was. But in truth, he could no longer be sure. All he was sure of at this point was that this was the egg of some creature he could not even imagine. He shuddered, feeling his whole body quake as he did so. The thought that something may be growing within that shell that looked to be as thick as a cottage wall totally unnerved him. Suddenly realizing he had totally forgotten about the man seated in front of him. Slowly, cautiously, almost bashfully, Larad asked, "Drem, what is that?" "That," replied Drem, "is your reason for being here."
Chapter 16. Larad felt the blood leave his knees. His body buckled beneath him as his eyes widened, and he struggled to maintain his sense of balance. "What?" gasped Larad in stunned disbelief. "Raknek and I have waited many years for you, Larad," spoke Drem almost solemnly. "Raknek? I take it Raknek is the giant egg," responded Larad. "I am almost fearful to ask what Raknek is." "There is nothing to fear in Raknek. There is only to fear for Raknek," said Drem. "Again, Drem, you speak in riddles which I do not understand," said Larad. "You promised we could talk of these riddles, and I am in need of answers if I am to understand." "Yes," said Drem. "Let me answer the riddles for you as I explain. I have searched for you many years, traveled throughout the country. To every hamlet and village I have looked for the one, and you are he. I do not expect you to understand all that I tell you now. I only ask that you listen until I finish. I said to you that there is time, yet there is no time. There is not 2 years, yet there is 1. I have time to make sure you are worthy, yet it is late. And we have no time to spare, you will be needed. You and Raknek." "Raknek and I," sputtered Larad. "Silence!" bellowed Drem. "I have asked you to wait until I finish before you ask your questions. All will be explained to you. You must learn to be patient. Much is at stake. We have but a short time in the age of things I had. You come here to start your conditioning, to ready your body and your mind for what lies ahead of you. It shall not come easy. You must work hard, listen carefully and obey. In order to be ready, your kindness was the first step. Your willingness to go to great blows to keep your word was but the second. Your carrying out your promise in spite of difficulties was but the third. These are but small things that make up a total man, each insignificant in and of itself. Yet, when heaped together within one person, they make a noble character, a man worthy of himself and deserving of the rewards of life and the admiration of other men. Not many would have done as you did. You braved the holy temple of Grafnu, only because you did not know it was forbidden of you, not being of the faith. Yet, you did not fear it, but you had heard stories of bloody rituals carried out there." Drem leaned forward from his chair. A smile crossed his lips and he continued. "The stories are all lies, made up by some priest long ago, to keep the ill-educated away. It was a place of peace and harmony, a place of nature and of inner spirit. It was a place where man or woman could experience the beauty of life, the wonders of the world around them. The only bloodshed was someone falling over a rock and scratching themselves now and again. It was this inner spirit that protected them for those many years before they slowly forgot about the inner peace. The obelisk points to the heaven to remind us that we did not just happen upon this earth. Each of us with our different talents. We're put here
by a power much larger than ourselves. One we are responsible to be all we are capable of being, and remain in harmony with the others of his or her creations. The ring of stones there was to remind us as well that we are our own protectors. We choose to let things into our lives, good or bad, that affect us, our feelings, our emotions, our very health. We choose to allow these things to flow in, or we may choose to shield ourselves from them. It is our choice, just as it is our choice how we deal with what we allow in you. Noted that there was silence there. It is a holy sight, recognized by the smallest insect to the talisman, such is the tribute, as it should be there, yes. I was aware by your emotions that you were ready to turn from your quest. You feared the darkness, and yet you also felt responsibility to your friends, knowing they depended on you to be there in the morning. It was not I, though, that brought forth the darkness and the wind, nor was it I that demanded Drem awaits. Yes, I knew of these things, but there are forces greater than I. It was your destiny that did these things. It was yourself, your inner being, that commanded you, so the path here is long and treacherous. None have been here save myself, you, Rachnek and Rachnek's parent, and those of us chosen before. None other has been worthy. Now, said Drem, before you bite through your tongue, you may speak, though I have yet to finish. I am but a mere lad, said Drem, certainly not worthy of whatever you have in store for me. I beg of you to tell me what Rachnek is. It shall be done, said Drem, said Drem, said Drem, said Drem, said Drem.
Chapter 17. Rachnek is a luff dragon, said Drem. A what? asked Larad. A luff dragon, explained Drem, is a dragon once of the waters of Ire. They lived peacefully in the lakes of the country, and being winged, they would fly from their own home lake to that of other relatives. Much as man visits relatives, friends and neighbors, few humans have ever seen them, as they had to stay deep within the waters to avoid the fishing nets of man, or find other places to live. Traveling only upon the night to visit their old homes most, now are gone, a few still live in secret places. Seen only by believers, a few eggs are tended by the watchers, of which I am, but one most still seek the one worthy. Each is different. Most may look far into the future to find the one for them, but look they shall, even if it takes forever, as to your feeling as though you are not worthy. Larad, man has not realized yet that talents, skill, aptitudes, and even memory is passed from generation to generation in varying degrees. It is how we nurture the young in order to let them accept these things and build upon them that determine whether a man or woman will realize their full worth. What is expected of me? asked Larad. And how is Rachnek involved? Am I to take your place because you are old and need someone else to carry on the tending of this monstrous egg? Old! exploded Drem. Emron and I have tended Rachnek, and I have tended for myself more years than you dare believe. It is not age that is at issue here. It is the completion of my mission. Feeling a bit taken back and in a hurry to get Drem out of his foul mood, Larad asked politely, Drem, how do you tend to Rachnek? How does he or she survive? And is or was there another watcher named Amron? The same as I is Amron, the same as you is Rachnek, responded Drem. Again, said Larad, I fear I do not understand. Are you sure it is I you seek? It is you, respond Drem quietly. You asked not long ago why I had not supped, and I told you I had been nourished. You felt the flask, it remained full, and counted the bread, knowing nothing was missing. It is not bread and drink that nourish us. Chapter 18. It is the human spirit, said Drem, that sustains us. It is belief in the impossible, if you will. It is faith, yet it is self-confidence. It is strength, yet it is trust. It is the essence of life within nature that feeds that which some cannot comprehend. Just because it is not seen does not mean it is not real often. What you think you see, because you expect it to be that way, is not as it appears. You, Larad, thought yourself upon a ledge when you lay back to sleep.
In fact, you were inside the entrance of Carrauntoohill cave, and the only danger was as you envisioned it. You failed to see. Because you did not look, you failed to hear my footsteps. Because you did not truly listen, you did not see the light. Because you expected darkness, even the echo. You expected to hear your voice sing from the cavern. Therefore it did. You were not expecting to hear my voice. Yet when you did, it came without echoing from the walls. Larad looked at Drem carefully. He wasn't sure if he was losing his own mind or whether he was beginning to understand the truth of Drem's words. Slowly Drem stood, holding out his closed fist to Larad. He spoke. "Take this, wear it upon your neck, always." Larad reached out his open hand, and Drem released a small, heavy object wrapped in a leathered strap into it. He pulled it close with his other hand, lifting the strap. Attached to the ringlet of leather was a Celtic cross which Larad draped around his neck, wondering what power or what significance this cross held. "You must go now, Larad," said Drem. "Return to whence you came." "But Drem," said Larad, "it is dark and I will not be able to see my way upon the path." "It is so," said Drem. "Sleep then. We will talk later." Larad was too full of questions to sleep soundly. He lay there was a time by the second chair, wondering where Drem had suddenly gone to, and wondering why. He had never seen his face, only the hood pulled far forward, and Larad wondered why. He thought that the mountain must be volcanic, as he could hear a steady rumble and vibrations on the floor where he tried to sleep. As his mind raced, Larad was not aware that he was slipping off to sleep. His last conscious thought was how late would he be in getting back to the bakery, and how would he ever explain any of this to Leda and Surti.
Chapter 19. The vile odor of rotting food and human waste slowly drew Larad from his state of sleep. How was he ever going to explain his being gone a whole day? Who would ever believe such a tale? Yet, something seemed even stranger to Larad. The familiar sounds. And it almost felt just like he was back in the village so far below. As Larad opened his eyes, his mind had difficulty accepting what they saw. Drem was nowhere to be seen. Rachnik was gone. In fact, the whole cave was gone. Larad was there at the pit next to the croc in his own small village. Rubbing his face, his eyes, running his fingers through his hair, Larad sat up thinking of his strange dream and the cave. Rising, he moved side to side and stretched his sore muscles. He had obviously slept in a poor position, or upon something he had to hurry and wash from the bucket. He did not want to be late and have Surti waiting for him at the shop. And he had no idea how to explain his absence, and he was struck that something appeared odd about the time of day, as though he had been gone the full measure of a day. As he removed his tattered coat and robe-like garment, his mind was reviewing the further humiliation he would suffer if he were ever to reveal his dream. Even Surti would probably have difficulty in keeping from laughing. But right now, he was more angry with himself, and sure anger must await him for not being there in the morning. How could he explain the old beggar was a wise man, a dragon in a huge egg? Something of major importance they were all supposed to accomplish together. Indeed, something must have gone bad in that last batch of grog, and he wondered if anyone else would talk of strange things this day. Leaning over, as he reached down for the crock and walked towards his lean-to to wash from the truth, he was aware of something swinging free from his chest. Something was suspended from his neck. Something that looked like an old Celtic cross. Chapter 20. It was all so strange. Surely, if true, he had been gone for many hours. Yet neither nor Surti seemed to have missed him at all, and everything was as when he first ventured forth. The croc had waited by the pit. Even the same patrons were present, with their usual abusive comments and humiliating demands.
Were it not for the cross he had about his neck, he would have deemed himself surely mad. But he was confused, as all seemed suddenly strange today. His mind tried desperately to recall every moment and event of his adventure, seeking anything that may have been overlooked. "Larad! I thought you had gone chasing after that big R!" yelled Surti. "Did he outrun you or disappear?" he said with a laugh that was joined by the other patrons as they chided him about only being gone mere moments. Larad's heart froze. How could he have only been gone moments, and any of what he recalled be true? Yet, there was the cross, and he reached within his tunic to reassure himself. It was. There it was.
Chapter 21. Days followed, then weeks which became months, and nothing was heard from Drem. And he had almost convinced himself that it was some kind of strange dream. He was to prepare for some great adventure without training, and he rubbed his head feeling the scar and wondering, if only that was real, it must have affected his mind. It had been almost a year, and his misgivings about Drem and Raknek increased with each new day, as he lay upon his mat of hay one night, thinking he must have been a fool to think that any of it was true. "Go to Drem!" a voice from the darkness softly whispered. Startled and afraid, Larad responded in a shaking voice. "But it is dark, and there is no moon to light my way." "Follow the light," spoke the voice again. Larad dressed himself and peered from the lean-to, and there in the distance was a soft glow. Much as he has seen in the cave, hesitantly he walked, unsure of his footing, when the voice of Drem roared. "There is no more time. You must hurry, for death awaits if you tarry." Frightened now more than he had ever been, Larad began to run towards the light, hoping that somehow his footing would remain stable and not falter. He had stayed in good physical condition, but was amazed that he did not seem to tire this time. And as his confidence increased, so did his haste in reaching the source of the light. The light seemed to stay just in front of him, guiding him along the uneven terrain, shifting left and right as obstacles were in his path, and in his mind, the voice of Drem repeating over and over, "Hurry, Larad, hurry. There is not much time." Larad's mind raced, staying with the light as memories floated forth again to that day so long ago. The opening that wasn't there, the hunger, unsatisfied yet fulfilled into Drem, and the egg he called Raknek, a mention of another, Amron, the mission of Drem, and what was to be his part, and what of death awaits if he tarries. As the light led to the path he had once taken up the mountain and past the holy temple of Grafnew, Larad slowed as fear once again overtook him. He had since heard more of the stories Drem had referred to and the fate of those who ventured there. But the words of Drem and his having passed them before without harm made him continue. As the temple loomed in front of him and the path revealed itself to him, terror of the twists and bends and sheer drop-offs made him freeze, and his progress was halted. He recalled the path narrowing, the area where he had struggled so at the missing portion of the path. And what of the path that was gone with no way to venture further? Would Drem await there? "Now! Come to me now!" boomed Drem's voice, and Larad looked about, thinking him at his side, but seeing no one and more afraid of Drem than of any physical harm. He renewed his efforts and sped onward towards where the mountain had seemed to open and an inner world existed. A world of Drem, Raknet in spirits of untold power through ageless time. But this time, the mountain did not open. The light led him towards the summit on a path he had never traveled, and all were forbidden upon a path he had not seen before, yet so clearly a large path, but one that looked wide, and as though it had just been cut into the mountain. His heart raced, not from exertion,
but from pure terror as to what awaited him, and to what urgency he had been summoned. As he rounded what was to be the final bend upon the trail, he found himself at the top of the mountain. How could he have gotten here so fast? The light seemed to rest upon a staff, held by a dark figure. "They come." The voice was that of Dream.
Chapter 22. Larad halted, again amazed that he wasn't winded after running what must have been miles from the village. Up a path no man had even mentioned, and find himself now, standing as though it had been a leisurely walk, at the crest of the tallest mountain in the country and the most sacred. Trembling, he asked of Drem, "Who is coming?" For a moment the figure stood silently, looking out across the land and out upon the distant sea. "Those who destroy and take our people, they come," replied Drem in a hushed tone. "We must warn the villages!" screamed Larad, and he began to turn and run, only to find that Drem had somehow moved in front of his path with unseen speed and silence. In an unnervingly calm voice, Drem replied, "No." Larad was suddenly filled with anger and frustration. He grabbed Drem and was immediately amazed that he seemed without weight, but screamed, "If you knew, you could have warned them so they could flee. They will all be killed. So this is what you meant about death awaits." And Larad released the figure and cried. Larad felt a hand upon his shoulder, and again the soft, even voice of Drem. "It is not their deaths that I referred to, it is mine." Totally shocked and taken back by the comment, Larad screamed again. "Are you planning on taking on those warriors by yourself, or with some egg that has not even hatched? Raknek lives as do you, and each is as one with the other," spoke Drem gently. "Your time is but beginning, and mine is at its end, as someday you too shall find." Bewildered and confused, Larad asked of Drem, "Can they be stopped? Can you help the villagers somehow? It is why you were chosen and why you are here. It is a passing and a beginning, and it will take all of us to succeed. Ask nothing more. As the sun rises, look upon the sea and expose the Celtic cross to the sun," spoke Drem. "How can you say that you will die?" asked Larad. "For it is my time, as it is the time of Amran," spoke Larad.
Amran?
asked Larad.
Who is Amran?
Amran is to Drem, and Drem is to Amran, as Raknek is to Larad, and Larad is to Raknek, responded Drem. "How?" began Larad, only to be met by the deep sunken eyes of Drem, and a soft word, silence, and even distant birds became quiet, and the soft breeze that had been seemed likewise to obey the command. Larad knew this command must be met, and he held his tongue, though his mind was full of questions, realizing that surely Drem must know what he was thinking. And now was not a time to distract the Druid Watcher. He focused, looking out into the darkness, his senses seeking the first sign of the invaders. "You learn well," a voice in his mind seemed to speak, and Larad knew he had been right. Chapter 23. Two figures stood upon the mountain top as the sun first began to cast its rays. One in a tattered and well-weathered robe of black, a hood upon its head, and a staff of gnarly wood clutched in the right hand, a light seeming to glow from the top, and a taller younger figure dressed in well-worn clothing, peering out to sea. Drem seemed to be focused upon a single spot, and try as Larad might, he could make out anything but the endless bounty of water. Lest he be out of turn, Larad held his tongue, waiting Drem to speak. Slowly the left hand of Drem lifted, and an aged hand with bony finger pointed as the voice of Drem broke the silence with a single word, "There." Larad strained his eyes, but to no avail. Whatever was out there was still beyond his sight, and he was amazed that Drem could make out anything with his old eyes. That Larad could still not see, but Drem stood there, still pointing, unmoving, until at last, many minutes later,
Larad could make out a cluster of tiny specks on the distant horizon. Larad could feel his heart pounding in his ears as it became apparent that there were a great many ships, and each ship was carrying a great many warriors. His mind went back to that fateful day when "They still live. They do not live well, but they still live," spoke Drem. "Who still lives?" asked Larad. "The family you think of it is not for today, but it is for someday," responded Drem. He no longer wondered how Drem could possibly have known what he was thinking, as Drem had it. "In due time you too shall become aware and know that which has not been spoken yet is, but that is not for today, but for some day as well. Now is the moment for battle. Now is the moment for you and Raknek. Now is the final task for Amran and I. How can we do battle? How can we defeat them when I have no idea what to do or why I am here?" asked Larad. "You shall know because you are chosen. You shall do because it is your destiny. It is not a lesson to learn. It is within you. You shall be just as I am, believe," responded Drem almost faintly. Chapter 24. They stood there together, watching the fleet of ships turn from tiny specks to masted vessels. Painted shields became visible along their sides, and the huge heads of their gods jutted from their bows. But still Drem did nothing, and Larad could hold his patience no longer. "Why do we wait?" demanded Larad. "I wait for you," responded Drem. "Wait for me? I don't know what to do," spoke Larad, in a voice suddenly full of self-doubt and fear. "Clutch the cross, call upon Raknek," said Drem in a calm voice. Larad fumbled for the cross within his tunic. He pulled it forth and held it towards the rising sun, it with his left hand for some unknown reason. He pointed towards the oncoming ships with his right hand and called out as loudly as he could the single word, "Raknek."
Chapter 25. Having done so, he could feel a trembling of the earth beneath his feet, vibrating his legs like being carried upon a cart. Then came a shrill and ear-piercing shriek as from behind him the earth opened and a majestic dragon streaked into the sky. Awe-struck, Larad stood there as Drem raised his staff skyward, pointing towards the ships with his left hand, and spoke, "Amran." This time, the earth shook violently, knocking Larad to his feet, and as he felt himself being lifted and cast back down time and time again, Larad was amazed to see Drem standing there as the very mountain itself seemed to tear itself apart. From the bowels of the mountain he heard a noise so loud that in spite of his being bounced all about, he had to cover his ears for fear of being deafened. Yet Drem stood there, almost defiant, and set upon the work at hand. Then in an explosion of rock, the largest creature he had even seen, and far larger than he could ever have imagined, burst forth and took to the sky. This dragon made Raknek appear as a sparrow in size and mass as it streaked skyward towards Raknek, who was headed in the direction of the approaching fleet of ships. Drem lowered his left hand, placing it by his side, and pointed the head of his staff towards the ships, lowered his head and his eyes, almost as though in prayer, and again uttered the word, "Amran." Larad looked up and saw the huge dragon turn slightly, then dive towards the ships. Without thinking, Celtic Cross still clutched firmly in his left hand. He changed it to his right hand and placed his left hand at his side as Drem had done. He then pointed the cross towards the ships as he lowered his head and uttered, "Raknek." Immediately Raknek likewise turned and dove towards the ships, just slightly in front of Amran, and no less determined to seemingly attack these ships with no evidence of any weapons. Larad glanced at Drem, but his face was emotionless, and his eyes now seemed to be peering through the vessels in the distance. Chapter 26. Initially, Amran and Raknek seemed to be content to just fly low over the ships or create panic, but then they both flew high and dove straight down at the two lead ships. Larad thought they were going to fly directly into them, possibly killing themselves.
but instead they dove into the water by the ships, swamping them and spewing their occupants into the sea. For a few moments, none of the other ships seemed to react, but then they turned to rescue those now floundering in the water, those that had not been forever carried beneath the sea by their implements of war and clothing. Larad became concerned for the dragons. They seemed to have disappeared beneath the waves as well, and there was no sign of them anywhere he was about to distract Drem. When the water once again exploded, but this time in front of the ships closest to those struggling fares in the water, it was the dragons taking to the air, again swamping boats and scattering crews. Drem, still not moving, told Larad to stand to his left and with a sigh said, "Amron is letting Ragnek play, we must end this." Larad now stood beside Drem as told and asked what he meant by the comment. "Amran is the mother of Ragnek. She's teaching that there are other ways to deal with manly versus killing. But not always. We have little time. We must finish this now," said Drem in a voice that suddenly sounded frail. But then in a voice like a command he roared, "Amron," and slammed his staff onto the ground. Immediately, Amron dove towards the remaining ships, and as she passed over them, fire spewed from her mouth, setting the ships ablaze. Larad, with the Celtic cross still in his right hand, slammed him downwards and commanded, "Ragnek," and though less volatile, the smaller dragon set its sights upon ships not yet aflame, spewing fire and circling, made additional passes upon the ships. In a matter of minutes there were but a few ships remaining, and Drem pulled his staff into his side and gently beckoned, "Amron," and the dragon turned and flew towards the mountain top where they stood. Larad was going to let Ragnek continue to avenge those who had suffered so, but within his mind he heard unspoken the words, "They will return to their land and speak of our protectors. They will not bother us again, but shall display the dragon on their ships as a reminder of this day. To kill them all will serve no purpose. There would be no one to tell the story." Larad sighed, and placing the cross above his neck once again, softly spoke, "Ragnek." The smaller dragon appeared to hesitate, but a backwards glance from Amron seemed to have conveyed a message to Ragnek, and the small dragon glided towards the mountain top behind Amron, where two men stood alone, but to wait them.
Chapter 27. Amron circled overhead until Ragnek joined her. Then the two dragons landed just behind Drem and Larad. Drem approached Larad and put his hands on Larad's shoulders. The aged eyes looked into the sparkling eyes of youth and shared a smile. Then Drem stood back and extended his staff to Larad. But as Larad reached for it, it fell to the ground. Larad bent to pick it up, and having grasped it, he noticed the ring Drem wore lay there as well. He stood erect, only to find himself within the cave that he recalled from long ago, Ragnek at his side, and a large white object upon a rock ledge. But nowhere to be found were Drem or Amran. He was going to call out to them, but he knew they were not there. For a brief moment he wondered if they were really dead, but then realized they were not. Their mission and destiny had been fulfilled, but somewhere they waited and watched unseen. He saw that on the stone table, the flask of grog and sack of bread he had left behind long ago. He felt of the bread and smelled of it, finding it was as fresh as the day he had first brought it with him to this place for Drem. But he was not surprised. He felt a strange inner peace, as though surrounded by friends not visible to the eye. Somehow, he had become a watcher, just as he knew the Ragnek were being watched. He knew there were others, and he knew that there would come a time that they would have to be united and join forces to fight a battle yet to come. But for now, the time had come for Drem and Amron to rest unless needed, and the time of Larad and Ragnek was just beginning. And he sat upon the stool of stone and began reading the runes left by Drem and those who had come before him. As he read, he realized that many stories he had heard of ancient times were true. Now he would begin his own journal, one that carried on from Drem.
and Amrun, to the time of Larad and Raknek.
Chapter 28. Initially, I thought the works we had uncovered and were deciphering were mere folktales of the writings of a storyteller of long ago. In the process of researching any known similar stories, we encountered many strange occurrences, but a recent report by a hiker who has requested to remain anonymous from that area may indicate otherwise. Here is that quote. I had been backpacking alone, which isn't something recognized as the safest thing to do. An unexpected rainy weather set in on me walking, traversing the latter portion of Carrauntoohill. Carrauntoohill to the English. When I slipped on some jagged wet rocks and tumbled, I remember hearing a snap and feeling sharp pain. The next full recall I have is being dry, and at the foot of Carraun, an old walking staff of some kind in my hand, and my friends find me and tell me they came looking for me as soon as the missus told them where I had gone. And the rain let up, a matter of about 4 hours. Vaguely I recalled being pulled in from the rain, my leg painful, and I passed out. Then a haze in which an old bearded man in some black cloak costume was tending my leg. But all of that is foggy. My friends checked me, but could find no bruises or evidence of injury, and felt I must have hit my head or had a pint or two too many, and found a dry place on the mount to weather out the storm. I would have thought no more about it, except the staff everyone saw me with. Now no one could find it bothered me when we left. It was a fine worn piece with wonderful pearls and an unusual cap upon it like a milky stone. A few months later, I was at hospital for an exam and talked to the doctor of my hurting my leg on the mountain. As a precaution, he x-rayed the leg and was astonished to find that the leg showed evidence of a recent nasty break, but had been expertly set and mended, a process that would have taken about 2 months. Then, other things came to my mind. Being fed a strange tasting bread and drinking some strange liquid from a flask of animal hide. A sound like snoring that shook the oddly lit room that appeared to be part of a cave, and a name, Raknek. I heard the man talking often to someone unseen called Raknek. As with all such reports, we try to verify as much as we can. His story checked out 100% as to his injury and the approximate time it would have happened, with several doctors indicating he could not have walked on it at all, and it had been reset without pins in spite of the severity of the break. We found no reason to doubt the remainder of his deposition. The report came in weeks before we had deciphered the names or had finished our work on the runs and setting the events of the writings in chronological order. So it will be up to the reader to decide for themselves how to apply the statement to the story. Contacts with reputable local organizations in the area have been met with responses that strange things have been known to happen, and often do in the mountains of Ireland, where even today it is said that dragons sleep in the care of the druid watchers and hidden caverns within the mountains. We believe that the first runs and manuscript are now complete, and the second set we're working on appears to contain references to a rescue and a battle involving huge numbers of what appears to be others, like Larad and Raknek, and we find again the names Drem, Larad, Raknek, and Amrun within these writing that we are calling God of Thunder and Rain of Fire.